Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Great Awakening Generator. I am your host, Rose McNair, and today I have with me Kirsty Marie. Hello, Kirsty, and welcome back.
Hi, nice to be back.
Great. Thank you for coming back, for making time to come back and talk with us. I just appreciate that because I know that, life is busy. Now, today, my question, we were talking about what we're going to talk about. I thought we might still just address the last episode, because in the last episode, you talked about your life, your story in terms of the subject of neurodivergence. So, is there anything else that we want to? I know we concluded on uniqueness of people who have children that are neurodivergent and who basically, I was saying, don't be surprised if you're an intelligent person and you have this very intelligent being for a child. I mean,
or a quirky person, or an out of the box person, or
yeah.
however you want to
Yes.
describe.
So is there anything you wanted to tell us more about post that time that you thought of?
I don't know if there's anything major to add. And we may cover this as we chat as well.
Okay.
But often what will happen is that parents will learn a lot about themselves through trying to assist their children. And you can have some massive revelations.
Yes.
And whether or not you see yourself as any of the official diagnoses like ADHD or autistic, it's likely that you'll notice some sensitivities in yourself when you look carefully that are also in your children. And it can be really powerful in terms of self-understanding, self-awareness, compassion, and kind of having grace for yourself. There could have been certain things that happened when you're a child or when you were younger that you feel a lot of sorrow or guilt or anger about. And often when you can redirect that through a lens of, oh, look at those things I was struggling with, look at those qualities I had that weren't being seen or harnessed, that helps you to, just see yourself in a whole new light sometimes.
Yes, I agree with that, because I think sometimes we, coming from the times that we have lived as children, like, I mean, for me, I was a little one, I don't know what, 50 years ago, something like that. The neurodivergence was not a topic. No one ever talked about that, right? But as you get on, as you get older and you start to learn things and you meet people who are now where we are openly speaking about it and, are being saying, are being referred to as being neurodivergent, you realize, I wonder that's what that meant when I did that. Or, because I had dyslexia a lot, right? And I didn't learn as quickly as my older sister did. I didn't do things as fast as she did. But that doesn't mean there was any neurodivergence. But I can tell you that some of my experiences, even the way I think, makes me realize, there's a bit of that in there, I think. There's slightness stuff in there, right? So for me, it was always like, well, just get with the program. You just, this is not how you do it. You do it this way, and let's just do it this way because that's the right way to do it, And I don't know, maybe when you were that age, you would have had a little bit of that, because we sort of, maybe by then we were kind of coming out of it, really. But it's good. It's like almost when you have a child that's deemed to be neurodivergent, perhaps it's about self-discovery as well. And that's what you're saying, right? You start to realize things about yourself, and that happened to you. That's what that meant, maybe.
Yeah, you understand things from your past. And then, of course, because you're living with your child, then it's a whole co-created thing.
Yes.
Where things that are happening bring up more and more. And just quickly along those lines, it can really help you to understand other family members as well.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
Particularly, those kind of your older relatives, for example, who they might have been really um, creative geniuses. They might have been really out of the box, and it would have been so not allowed that they
Yes.
would have been like,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and sometimes that would express itself in not such positive ways.
That's right.
And it can really help with understanding and compassion
Yeah.
for other people as well. Like, oh, I can see these qualities in you, and I can see that you never got to express them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I so understand it, because you get that uncle who's considered eccentric, always a bit silly, like,
Yeah.
but like, okay, he just did things differently from everybody else. And what was wrong with that? But oh no, that was not acceptable. you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So that's true. I don't know if we talked about this because now I reviewed some of the interview that we did the previous one, but I'm going to ask it again. And so, and please excuse me if I've asked this before. You were telling me about both your children
Mm.
and both of them having, like both children are deemed neurodivergent. Now, please, if I'm saying the wrong words, that correct me because I really don't mean to be disrespectful in any way. I'm just ignorant if I use the wrong word. Um, you was talking about them being one being hypersensitive. Run us through that again because I would love to hear, and this is for the benefit of anybody else who has children, um, you know, like this, and it would be a good way to go into I guess talking about how you navigate life, and give some tips through that conversation.
Mm. Yeah, I suppose, yeah, we could quickly recap what it
Yeah.
means to be
Yes.
sensitive or hypersensitive.
Right.
And and it can affect people in a bunch of different ways, obviously. But one of the ways is, to have obvious sensory sensitivity. So to be very sensitive to the light,
Yes.
um, and to sounds, and not only, the intensity of a sound, it's about the way you filter these things, the light and the sound. Filter out background noise, for example. That can be really challenging because you're taking in so much.
Yes.
Yeah, and also, the way you feel things on the body could be overwhelming. Itchy tag could be apocalyptic or
Yes.
um,
Yes.
anything along those lines. So my voice has gone a bit crazy.
No worries.
Yeah, so there's all that that kind of obvious sensory stuff, and then there's just a general, often sensitivity of the nervous system.
Yep.
Yeah, and so it's like a difference in the way information and feelings and sensory information is filtered. So it's like a lot coming in often. And there's a
Wow.
lot of beauty in that sensitivity, right?
Yes.
Um, and at the same time, it can be really overwhelming, um, and just a lot for a small person to deal with,
Mm.
particularly if they're not able to clearly communicate what's going on for them.
Yes. Yes.
Mm.
So, did you say something about the light? So, you said something about the light in the previous video, and now you mentioned the light as well. If there's too much light,
Mm.
do you think, I don't know much about this, but they talk about the Schumann resonance and the solar flashes and solar flares and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
Are they affected? Obviously, that is hypersensitivity, so they must be affected in a big way when these things
Mm-hmm.
happen, right? Are you aware of these things happening? Do you have a way to measure it?
Not really, but quite often I'll feel a little bit strange, and I'll notice that the children are acting, more sensitive than usual. And
Yes.
then sometimes I'll look it up and be like, oh yes, there was a big solar flare, or there was a
Yes.
big spike in the Schumann resonance,
Yes.
and things like that. So, yeah, definitely, as a family, we do feel it. My poor husband.
Uh,
He's like, "What's wrong with everyone today?" And I'm like, "Oh, it's just stuff going on." But it's, it's like anything. It can be really unsettling. But then if you're able to get yourself in a somewhat kind of aligned space when these things are happening, then they can actually be very energizing,
yeah,
and sort of like an upgrade. Or
yeah,
they can be both at once. It's like, yes, you are upgrading, but also it can feel uncomfortable at
yes.
the same time.
Yeah, yeah. I just know that when I think about what's been going on in my world in the last 12 months in terms of sensitivity and all the light coming down and how I've had my body has had different responses to it. And they're talking about they're calling them ascension symptoms as well. And sometimes, oh my gosh, the ascension symptoms, they're very quite often they very much present like illnesses we already have on the planet.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Or a detox or
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And acute symptoms of this illness that you might have been diagnosed with and been in remission from, and suddenly there it looks like it's back and it's really intense. So
Mm,
so I know that being an adult, that kind of was a challenge for me. So I can imagine being a young person
mhm.
and going through all of that process of getting downloads and not quite understanding what's going on all over the place, all of that. So
Mhm.
I can imagine that it's a challenge for a young person. So two
Yeah.
children with different needs, how do you manage that?
Hmm. That's a good question. Um, well, to be honest, we kind of just take it day by day, and kind of roll with it. So we're very relaxed in terms of our scheduling.
Yes,
We have some activities we like to do, but we try and keep it not too busy
yes,
so that we have
yeah.
lots of time for just being
Good.
and not rushing around, and those types of things.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, just
Mm,
lots of yeah focus on just being there, being with the pet, trying to get out in nature because I would like to do that more.
mhm, mhm.
Um, Eating really good food, um, and
Okay,
you know being with people who we really connect with. There's lots of
good.
beautiful people in the homeschooling community.
Right.
Um, yeah, but having said that, it is often quite tricky to meet, both of their needs, especially if they seem to be, one against the other, which happens with siblings.
Yes, yes,
Happens with any siblings, but
yes.
it's kind of just intensified
Okay,
um, when they have really specific needs. So I have one child who would like to be out every day, um, and another he would like to go out, but he could stay home every day, and he hates getting ready to go out because
uh-huh,
like
uh-huh.
just feels really pressured. And so yeah, we do have this interesting kind of push pull
Mm,
dynamic of
mm.
trying to meet everyone's needs, and of course like mine because
You have to
you
manage
know you
that.
you need
Yeah,
to look after yourself, but
yeah,
the reality is like as a mother, then
yeah.
you put the children first, um, and then you try and kind of do the best you can in terms of
Mm,
your own needs. After you
yeah.
meet the basics, we're really good at meeting basic needs like food and water
Yes, yes,
and
yes.
that
I
type
think,
of thing. But it's
yeah.
more like, yeah, well, do I have time for a hobby? Do I have to, yeah,
Mm,
all that
exactly.
kind of stuff.
How
Mm.
do you navigate that, like where they get all that they need, but you also have that time for you? Because mothers, well, self-sacrificing, but quite often self-sacrificing attitude has been placed on us. It comes through the traditions. We've been
Mhm.
programmed. If you're not doing that, you cannot be a good mother, for example. So there's all that to think about.
Yes.
Uh, but I think if you are going to be the school teacher and the constant caregiver of your child, or in anything, that you do have to have a time where you take time out of that and do something for you and be with yourself. And
Mm,
and that's a necessary thing. It's very necessary to function, right?
yeah, it is really important. And, in the boys' earlier years, I found that incredibly difficult. And it definitely didn't happen enough. And I
Yes,
think that's just kind of a byproduct of the way our societies are now, that,
yes,
you have the nuclear kind of family. If you're fortunate, you have a supportive partner, but most of us don't have much else in terms of a wider network of people.
yes, yes,
Um, yeah, and so
yeah,
that is hard. And, I'd love to see um, mothers supporting each other more, because there's a lot of isolation, and also, the community supporting parents more. It's very kind of isolated um,
yes, yeah,
in a lot of ways.
yeah.
And as the boys have gotten older, I'm able to do a bit more. Um, and this year, kind of for the first time, I've got a babysitter, and it's like it's revolutionary. So
Nice.
she lives nearby, and I can call on her maybe a couple of times a week, and um, she looks after the dog as well, which is like,
Nice.
yeah. So she's
Nice.
really a godsend. But
Yeah.
you do have to be creative and look for ways to support one another. Like,
Yeah. It's not a very mainstream life, is it? Because the mainstream life is a lot about
you get your
pro.
break when the kids go to school,
That's right.
and
Yes.
then all these types of things. Yeah.
Yeah. But
Mm.
your life is being with them. Most of your life is about being with them, being their teacher. Um, you know, most parents, we are all teachers to our children. But
Mm.
if it was mainstream, then you'd leave them at school and come back home and do or go to work and do
Mm.
whatever it is that you're doing. So it's different. Um, I feel uh, like we said in the previous video, it's like a whole lifestyle change that you would have had to make when this happened in your world, and so much learning and so much children generally teach us,
Yes.
but you've had an additional a
Mm.
vast
Mm.
expansion in your knowledge and learning in terms of this, in terms of being a parent.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how do you navigate a day, for example, where both of them are at each other? Because usually normal life. Well, no, sorry, not normal life, but usually children siblings do this. I'm not going to say normal
Mm.
life. That's a normal thing for siblings to do, right? But
Yeah.
there's that the additional layer for you is the hypersensitivity of both of them.
Hmm.
So how do you navigate it? Like,
um, they're at an age now where sometimes
sorry,
I can get them to give each other some space when they're obviously setting each other off.
yes.
Um, but that's a difficult skill to unhook from the drama. Like, how many adults do you know who can't unhook from the drama?
Ah,
And so
yeah, more adults than less, actually.
yeah, and so it's a skill that takes time to learn, and it can't always be successful. And so a lot of the time, what it's about is just being there, obviously making sure they don't actually hurt each other. Um, and it's that whole thing of not adding fuel to their fire, but being the calm of the storm, which is, you know, it sounds simple, but very hard.
I'm sure. I'm sure.
So
I'm
hard.
sure.
And it's
Yeah.
and it's such a powerful skill
Yeah.
to learn. And the good thing is it's going to happen over and over and over. So if you feel like you weren't really that successful one time, don't worry, because there'll be another time, and you can try again and again and
That's
again.
right. That's
Um,
right. Yeah.
yeah, and it is like, it's just sometimes you just have to be there,
Yeah.
and it's like riding the storm,
Yeah. Yeah.
not throwing any fuel on the fire, keeping everyone safe, and then
Yeah.
helping everyone to calm down in whatever way works for them,
Mm.
whether it's like giving themselves some space, whether it's, going to see the dog. Um, some kids will like to shake stuff. I love, and sometimes some kids will need to shout and scream, and And it really depends on their age. Like a very young child usually won't have the presence of mind once they've already escalated to be able to do things to calm themselves down. That's
Okay.
only going to work if you notice it gradually starting to ramp up.
Okay.
So that's a very important skill. So noticing when it's starting to go up
Yeah. And
and looking
intercepting
for,
that. Yeah.
yeah, looking for ways to, do
Yeah.
something physical or turn on some music or some distraction sometimes,
Yes.
not in a way that you're, minimizing what's going on for them. Sometimes you just, be like, redirect, let's do something else. This thing looks like it's frustrating. Or,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So it's noticing the build up. Sometimes it's really hard. Sometimes it just seems to go like that because it's difficult to notice all the little things that are going
Oh,
on
I'm sure.
in
I'm
someone
sure.
else's body because
Yeah.
there might not be very many external
Yeah.
signs and you still have to, do other things, making lunch, doing whatever you do.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, once it kind of goes boom, it is just that, yeah, ever so
Yeah.
important skill of just being with it, not taking it personally, because sometimes it can feel like an attack.
Yes.
So yeah, all those things, practicing non-judgment,
So yeah.
breathing through the storm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So it feels like it's having an organic life is good. And
yeah,
in a lot of in all aspects, really, in most aspects, having an organic life, eating organically, living simply, um,
mm.
just keeping things low key. And do you find technology is something that hypes them up in terms of their
Yeah,
sensitivity in that?
yes. And just as in a quick aside, obviously I'm saying that we keep things really low key. Some kids who are on the autistic spectrum, for example, they love a routine. So it's just like a
Yes.
this time. But so you just have to cater to your individual child with that, of course. But yeah, technology is a big one, of course, today
Yeah.
because there's so much of it.
Yes.
And I do notice with my children, and I'm sure lots of other children, that it's very addictive.
Yes.
Um, and it's very hard to switch things off. Um, and they want more and more
Yeah.
because it's
Yeah.
addictive.
Yeah.
So it's that thing of like, yeah, listen to your children, respect their wants and needs, and then also be the parent. Know that some things are really hard for them to regulate themselves, like
Mm.
sugar and screens. And,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, so we
Good.
do. We're not completely screen free. We were when the boys were very young,
Yes.
and we have some now, mainly just a bit of TV rather than games because for us it seems like that's even more
Yeah.
addictive. But
Yes.
it's that balance. It's like yes, it's part of our world, um, but there can be consequences and
Mm.
you know the addictive nature, but also of course the EMF exposure. Um,
Yes, yes,
yeah,
definitely. If anything for that, right, the EMF exposure, if anything, to start off with any person, no matter what the situation is,
mhm,
EMF exposure is important to reduce that.
yeah,
So I think what I'm hearing through our conversation is that you have taken life completely on board to live it separately in terms of when I say separately, I mean to live it on your terms and what works for you and the children and for your
mm,
husband and for the life you live and have. And you had to do it. There's no like you could have done what like followed your career and have all this help you could have and just function because I'm sure there are people that are doing that. Why didn't you? Why didn't you choose to do that?
um, well, yeah, I was always planning to stay home at least until school age. Like I just knew that I wanted to do that.
Okay.
And in terms of having that time and that nurture. Um, and then it became clear to me very quickly that I didn't feel good about sending my particular children to school, not
Yeah.
ones that are, you know, locally available to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, like that is a big decision to make, because
Yeah.
it doesn't leave a whole lot of time, especially in the early years, for much else.
Yeah. Yeah.
Plus the financial implications and all
Hmm.
the rest of it. Mm.
Yeah, definitely. Financial and also financial implications will add pressure to the family situation. And when you're having two children or three children, whatever, they have I don't know how people manage finances these days when they've got children more than one child. Because life is expensive. There's a lot of, just in general.
Yeah,
So
just like, even just things for food, but then you add on, of course, if you've got your kids at home, you want to do some nice activities with
yeah,
them. Some of them, if they were in school, they might get that kind of activity there, but they
yeah.
don't. So yeah, all of
Mm,
that really, yeah, adds up. So you do just have to prioritize.
mm, mm.
Um, mm,
So,
yeah.
for the benefit of our audience, I don't know anything about homeschooling, right?
Mhm.
So is homeschooling subsidized? Is it
Um, yeah, a little bit. So we get you get a homeschooling allowance, and it's per
okay?
child. Um, and you get it twice a year.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm totally not like it's amazing to get anything. I'm not complaining at all, but it's a pretty small amount if you
Okay.
um um factor in that you're basically forfeiting an income
That's right.
by
Yes.
being home.
Yeah.
So
I think it's perfectly okay to say that because that's what it is. It's
it
not
is.
different. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. I have one friend who always refers to it. She's like, when you think about it, it's really like the most expensive private school education you could give your child by
That's
giving
right.
up giving up your earnings basically,
That's
and then
right.
paying for things on top of that.
That's right.
Um, mm,
Exactly.
mm, mm, mm.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So pretty yeah, I agree with that. Um So tell us then some of the tips that you would give to a new parent. There's some of the suggestions you could make to a new parent who has now discovered their child is considered neurodivergent. What would you say to them initially?
Mm. I would say initially, if it's a bit of a shock to you, for example, like if you didn't even suspect it, don't panic. Yeah, there
Yeah,
can be a tendency to think, oh gosh, this is something that's kind of broken and I need to
yeah,
fix it. But
yeah,
yeah, it's that whole thing of like your child is the same child they were the day before they
yes,
received a diagnosis, um, and it's okay. Yeah, so
yeah,
take your time to think about it, process your feelings about it, and whatever feelings you have are fine. Nothing wrong with
yeah,
feeling whatever you feel. You might feel relieved, you might feel devastated, and that's all of that's going to be temporary, and it will just just give it some time to flow through before you do anything really. Um,
yeah.
yeah.
Very important, I think, hey, to give yourself time to absorb that because and to be okay with any feelings a person might have because if you feel disillusioned, if you feel shocked, if you feel scared, if you feel sad, sorry,
Mm,
all of those things, it's important to acknowledge it and to say, yeah, I feel those things. And
mm,
then I guess that's the first step towards uh navigating life in a successful way. um and I
mm,
guess there is no timeline for people on how they would respond to news like that or to a child like that. But I think if your response to child has to change very quickly because that's a requirement. That's my attitude. But the feelings within you, well, that's okay. That people can look for help and get some counseling for it or whatever, right? But
yeah, or even just talk to someone else who's been through something similar. There's so much um value in just talking to someone who gets it.
mm,
Someone who understands, who believes you, Because, you know, a lot of parents who have been through this process where people don't really believe what they're saying, or don't understand how much they are struggling,
Yeah.
or whatever it is, because
Yeah.
it doesn't look the same looking in from the outside.
Yeah. I feel like it's additional pressure in being a parent, because, you know, when you become a parent, just becoming a parent, it's a culture shock, right? Firstly, as much as I say that because, well, I had a culture shock. So I speak from my perspective on that. But it must be for everybody who becomes a parent for the first time to have a culture shock in some way, shape, or form. Also, having another child, a second child, can also be culture shock, because it's like, how do we incorporate that? Just in general, whether children are neurodivergent or not, or deemed neurodivergent or not. And so you know, people have to be easy about this with themselves. And also, it's always about, what's the most important thing you have to do initially. You have to, you know, even if you're having all these issues in your mind about it, but you have to make sure the child is healthy, safe, happy, getting what the child needs, what is practical, all of that. And then work with the feelings you have, address what a person feels. Because I remember when I became a mother, my first 2 months, I found it rather daunting, because now there was this child. I was pregnant, I was all excited, and then she had come out into the world, and there was this person looking back at me that I was, oh my gosh, totally responsible for the rest of my life.
It's kind of terrifying. Yeah.
It is terrifying to become a parent. As much as you wanted it, you might have planned it, all of those things, you know. So I think it's important for new parents, or even if it's a second child or third one, to be okay about feeling like that. Because, you know, I love it when people say, oh, but the third one, I was just all okay. I was like, oh, here's another one. To me, I don't know if I'd ever said that if I'd had a third one, you know, or a second one for that matter. So I say lucky to, you know, good luck to all of those people. I'm glad you feel like that, but not all of us feel like that. And then to have this additional thing that you have to readjust to whenever that happens in the future. So there must be a lot of children in the mainstream education sector, right? So let me ask this question. It's a little bit personal. Did your medical doctor ever suggest using medication for the situation? You know, what was that like?
Well, not really personally, because one thing, I kind of pursued a diagnosis myself, kind of self-referred to, and I went to my GP and said, I think this is going on with my kid. Can you get me a referral to see someone? And you can actually self-refer a lot of the time anyway. So it wasn't like someone had come to me and said, I think your child has ADHD.
Yes.
And because a lot of the time that would happen in a classroom setting where the teacher's like, you know, your child's having trouble focusing and and have you thought about this? And so I kind of I chose the psychiatrist who went to based on some recommendations, and he seemed quite good, and he was very astute. Like he could he kind of said to me, I'm assuming by the time we finished the conversation, he was like, I'm assuming you don't want to go down the medication route at this stage. And, like, it's fine if you do. But, he could tell from the way I was talking that wasn't my go-to. But, some people do receive pressure, often if their child is in school, for example, and their behavior is considered disruptive to the rest of the class. And so then, that is hard. And then also there's this idea, and some people would say, you're doing a child a disservice if you don't medicate them, because it's just like,
oh my gosh,
giving a child, often the comparison is, you wouldn't not give glasses to a child who couldn't see properly, or you wouldn't, not give insulin to your diabetic child. And so I can see how that makes people think, oh, well, it's a, my child's not producing enough dopamine, so they need this thing. But, it's not like it's fixed. And there's many other ways to manage it without the risk of side effects and all the rest. So
I
so I'm
feel
certainly
like,
not judging parents who
no,
choose to do that, because they do it for a big variety of reasons.
and
Yeah.
and everyone's different, right? Everyone might have similar diagnosis or the same diagnosis, but every child, like I think you pointed that out, that they might be deemed neurodivergent, but there is, you have two children, and there's like these different things, and it's coming under one, maybe one umbrella or something, but they have different things going on with them, so it's very individualistic. So
Totally.
that's
I
the
would say,
thing.
if we circle back to your question of like, what would you do when you first received this diagnosis for your child? Yeah, it's that taking some deep breaths and just start with yourself and just noticing what your response is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, start, as you talked to at the end of the last conversation, I think, like, start with just accepting them just as you are. Try and release
Yes.
expectations and release prior judgments about how a child should be. In addition to that, it's that noticing what things that they do or the ways they behave, like how it triggers you,
Yeah.
and just be with that, and then you'll learn so much about yourself.
Yeah.
Often about things that happened to you as a child, maybe
Yeah.
things that you weren't allowed to do. Like, I was never allowed to be noisy. I was never allowed to be disrespectful. I always had to wait. Like, all of that stuff can come up, and it's really powerful to notice it and just be like, it's not all about my child. A lot of it's about the energy of me, even if it's subconscious.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I just, sorry if I yawn. I've just got to say that I did not. I tend to do this after 2 p.m. If I've been busy at 2 p.m. and I didn't have the time to sit down and close my eyes, it will happen. So I apologize in advance. It's not boring at all. So I'm like, oh, how rude is that?
Sometimes you just need some extra oxygen.
That's true. And I've just been doing a just to say, I was just doing a session with somebody. We're doing the tapping technique series with someone, with Barbara Stark, and she took me through. I am the crash test. So she's taking me through the process where we're teaching people tapping techniques, but not in an intense way, because if you say, the idea is that is to be able to fix yourself within 5 minutes if you're feeling a certain way, and just for different things, what you would be, different topics. So, and I was doing this yawning in there quite a lot, and then I kind of came out, and then I'm suddenly feeling it again, like, well, go do that, sit in my chair and go to sleep. So I apologize and sorry for digressing. I think this topic that we are discussing today is so loaded. There are so many aspects to it because it's so vast. And I know that from the very little that I know, that medication has been a sensitive topic, because some way back somebody was saying we should not medicate children who are neurodivergent, because the medicine tends to dim out what they've really come to do here. And so so I think why I asked about the medicine is I wanted us to just I wanted your opinion on it, but also there's no disrespect to a parent who's using it. It was allowing the medication because there would be individualistic reasons for it. It's not like you can paint everybody with the same brush. They didn't come here for that. No, we've gone through that, but no, they're not allowed to. And you have to wonder, is it because prior to now, generations did not listen? And so now we have these individuals that have come, and they've come in an intense way so that we actually do pay attention.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what is a typical day in the life of Kirsty?
Oh, I don't know. That's probably really boring.
I doubt it, but okay.
Yeah, we just do, well, we spend a lot of time preparing food and eating food.
Good.
Yeah, playing with
Yeah.
the animals,
Yeah.
just playing. My boys are really big on imaginary play,
Okay.
um, being
Okay.
read to, all those types of things.
So really
Um,
helping them express and explore the imagination, right?
yeah, they're very imaginative and they love, one of my boys loves drama, so
Okay.
drama classes, and the other one's really into horses. So those are kind of like their special things that they're
Okay.
really into. But we just kind of follow their interests. So if they're on a dragon buzz or a Lego buzz or a
Okay.
cooking spree, we
Right.
just go with it, and they learn things during the process.
Good. Good.
Yeah.
Because they seem to learn, there's a lot of visual learning and practical learning, right? That they would probably be gravitating to or do extremely well at, or that's the best way for them to learn. Is that my understanding correct, do you think?
It depends on the child. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Okay.
So,
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, even both my kids are different. One's very they're both kinesthetic, but one's very kinesthetic. Like he's all
Okay.
about moving his body and physically experiencing things.
Okay.
Um, and one of them's like he's a talker. He is a talker. If
Nice.
anyone who knows me is listening, they'll be like, oh yeah, I know which one that is. Like, and it's amazing. He's so chatty and fascinating to me because he's the absolute opposite of how I was as a child. I was
Yeah, I can
like,
imagine. I can imagine because quite often I have personally, I would probably say I'm a bit neurodivergent myself, as you know, and I talk a lot. I was always asked to be quiet
yeah.
and to not ask questions.
Yeah, that was one of my fears about him going to school is that he can't help but interrupt sometimes. And like obviously he'll learn to like be a bit more diplomatic with that as he
Yeah,
gets older, right? And he has,
yeah,
but
yeah.
he'd just be in trouble all the time because he'd
Ah,
be interrupting, he'd be asking a million questions,
yeah, yeah.
get so excited, and all this like loud noise will come out of him. It's like that's part of his
Mm,
charisma, and
yeah.
it's also potentially quite disruptive in a classroom.
I know.
um,
Yeah,
yeah.
I so understand. I'm one of those children, and
Mm.
you know, I I have a mother that would always say to me, "Well, you just need to be quiet and just do as you're told." And I'm like,
Yeah, very old school.
"Kid,
Yeah.
do it like your sister because she doesn't,
Oh,
right?" It's like,
yes.
okay, that's it. But
And all those
anyway,
things you carry with you. But like I would say, we've talked a little bit about just understanding yourself, understanding your child. It's just so much of just being there
yes,
and
yes,
just feeling the energy of a situation and responding organically.
yeah,
But in terms of practical things, it's kind of like once you go through that process of kind of accepting the way things are, then you can start to look at like, what are some things that would help my child to really
yeah,
thrive more?
yeah,
Because we talked about this sensitivity, that can be a superpower, it's really amazing. And sometimes it's so intense that a child struggles to function with daily tasks.
mm,
So
yeah,
it's that what we want is to not to get rid of the sensitivity, but to find ways for it to be manageable and harnessed in specific ways, which
yeah,
takes time. Um,
yes,
it takes time to learn how to filter and how to not be overwhelmed by sensations and emotions and
yeah,
um, all that type of thing. But
mm,
on a practical level, then you can start with um, looking at diet, for example. There can be
yes,
obvious
yeah,
allergens, pesticides, that type of thing. Um, and you can look at some children might really benefit from gentle ways of detoxing. And as a obviously disclaimer, this is not medical advice, blah blah blah.
yes, of
Um,
course,
yeah, seek advice from your medical professional.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, you have a good naturopath, it's amazing as well.
yeah, yeah,
You know, sometimes you can start with just really simple things like we talked about earthing, grounding. Um,
yeah,
a lot of these children that's like almost like they're not fully in their bodies because
Yeah.
they're so like maybe that you're so high vibrational and
Yes.
you're
Yes.
so connected to other realms, and they've got so much sensation coming in because it's
Yeah.
not as filtered,
Hmm.
and it can feel like, whether it's conscious or not, that they don't quite want to be here, or they don't know how to be here with their
Yes.
feet firmly on the ground. So the
Yeah.
walking barefoot, Epsom salt bath,
Yeah. Very good.
those things are
Yeah.
incredibly helpful. Um,
Yes.
a lot of them will really respond amazingly to animals.
Yes.
Partly because it's grounding, and partly because it's sort of non-judgmental bonding.
Yeah.
There's a lot of subtle energetics that go on when you interface with an animal or a tree,
Yeah.
or even a rock. We have a lot of rocks and sticks that are collected around our home.
I think that's good. I collect rocks too. I have a rock that I brought back from Scotland, and every time I feel like I want to go back to that place, I hold it and I feel it, and I feel its energy, and I look at it because the look of it changes based on the weather, all that. So I think that it's great to be able to have those things. Do you use meditation? Have you started meditation and mindfulness practice or anything like that?
A little, and again, like tailor it to your child, because some kids will love listening to a guided meditation. My guys at the moment, mostly they respond much better to any type of active meditation.
Okay.
Yeah, so moving their bodies, but also stuff like drumming, or maybe some children really respond well to learning some martial arts, things like that.
Yeah.
Music, the active meditation of petting your cat or your dog.
Wow.
Because sometimes, sitting down and focusing on a meditation, that's too much, or it's too boring, or it's too much pressure, or it's kind of sucks because mum suggested it, or you have to
Exactly.
you have to be a
Exactly.
bit creative. Yeah.
And meditation for a 10-year-old or an 8-year-old. I mean, like, really, we weren't doing that. It took us a while to actually get ourselves into the zone of meditation. And,
Yeah.
and so you think about it like someone of that age group doing it. It's like, okay, it's going to get tricky like that, right?
Yeah, there's different ways of doing it. And even, when you talk about, lots of people talk about helping children to name the feeling they're feeling, and
Yeah.
things like that. And, some children will respond really well to that, and others will be like, I don't want you to say what I'm feeling. Even the suggestion, like if you say, oh, it seems like you're really frustrated, some children will be like, oh yeah, and others will be like, it's not what I'm feeling.
Yeah. What do you mean?
You've just made me mad by trying to tell me what I'm feeling.
Yeah.
So
Analyze
you've
my
got to
feelings
gauge
and
that.
tell me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Do you
So
find
yeah,
go on, sorry.
that's it. Yeah. So active ways of meditating can be amazing.
Yeah.
And you can introduce kind of spirituality if you like to, in different ways, to kids that appeal to them. Like I mentioned before, my kids love doing things like calling in a unicorn or a dragon to guard over them at bedtime.
Yes.
And that's like a really fun way of connecting into their intuition, because it's it's playful. But then sometimes they get really into it, and they're like, oh, this is the color that my dragon is tonight. And
and that was going to be my next question. What did they glean from listening to these things and going through that? Like, they must have some level of understanding, like even with light language. If they heard it, I heard somebody's dragon light language a couple of weeks ago. Imagine if they heard that, what they might see, what they could tell us. That would be like awesome to try, right?
Yeah, and just introducing it, and just the world of vibration, and keep talking about it so it stays alive with us. We don't do a lot, they're normal kids. They mostly just want to play and do normal kid things, but just we'll keep it as part of the day where, talk about your energy field and your chakras and the power of intention and,
Yeah.
yeah. And
So
they
interesting.
see me doing things like muscle testing and sending spoons and stuff, and they're like, yeah, they're not quite old enough to think I'm really uncool yet. So it's like,
Yeah, just give them a couple of years.
so yeah. So and it's probably a good window of time to introduce ideas to them.
Yeah.
But it's never too late anyway,
Yeah.
children will figure stuff out.
So what would you say to somebody? Now, I asked you this question before, but we talked about, I asked what would you say to somebody who's just got given that diagnosis for their child? And you told us, what would you say to somebody who now has got the diagnosis, they embracing what it is and they moving forward? How do they, would you say to them, hey, you've got to keep an open mind always and be prepared to get out of the box and, try various things? Would you encourage people to do what you did? I know that this is a weird question. Because you seem to have done all the research rather than just say everything that take everything that a medical professional would have said to do. I'm not saying you defied them, but what I'm saying is you did a lot of your own research from what you're saying to me.
Yes, which is a very politically incorrect thing to do these days. Don't be doing your own research, will you?
Oh, yeah, right. Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, I would say it's good to be open and be open enough that you might think it's like this one day, even in your you're not going down the medical route, for example. You might think this is how it is. Just always be open for that to evolve because we're all evolving all the time. So what's helpful today might not be helpful tomorrow. But it's being aware of all of it. And I always just come back to it's so helpful if you can learn to just hook into your own intuition about it. Because it's, whether you're talking about mainstream or complementary or spiritual, there's a lot of experts out there, right? But it's you and your child or your children. And so be really open to people's perspectives, but you are the expert.
That's right. Yeah.
And you're the one who's there with them, feeling.
Yeah. Because it's a day-to-day thing, isn't it? It's a day-to-day thing. Every day you'll be the one living it. So who better to know more about it than you? Because the doctor's going to see you from time to time and give you advice or whatever. But you live your everyday life. All of us live our everyday lives. We must be able to navigate it. I can imagine that it's kind of a shock or it's an adjustment in thinking, but I also think it's something that cannot be ignored, cannot be swept under the carpet. It's calling us out of ourselves. It's calling us out of that routine we've been in for so many, maybe for the last 100 years. We've been in this routine and we're being called out of it to move forward in another way. And it's also another way that is like saying, well, if you have to follow a system, then there will be consequences of it, or the system is not going to be adequate enough to deal with all aspects of it. And so therefore you are called to rise up and find out more and work out what exactly it means and how you implement a lifestyle that supports everybody in the process. Because a lot of people may not have 2 children to be deemed neurodivergent. They might have 1 and they might have 3 other children. That sort of thing. So how do you blend it in to work with not just life, but work within the family, work within the school system, all of that, if you're going that way. Yes. So I'm wondering if there's anything else we want to talk about. Any more tips? Let me ask that. Any more tips you want to give to parents or people in general about this?
yeah, I suppose, I would go through a kind of bit of a checklist, like look at diet, look at toxins, um, look at things like um, reflexes. Like children can have retained or undeveloped reflexes,
Yes.
which is things like the Moro reflex, which is like a fight or flight response, and there's a whole bunch of other ones. So those kind of physical things can be really important to do
Yes.
with the way people respond to stress, the way they process information, and the
Yes.
hemispheres of their brain, and that type of thing. Um, yeah, look at sensory things. Try and see the world through your child's, I say eyes, but obviously that's just one sense. That was just a metaphor.
It is.
Yeah,
It is.
yeah. Almost like meditate and get into the try and get into the energy field of your child.
Yeah.
Yeah, and think,
Yeah.
what's
I mean,
affecting them, what isn't, and then what lights them up. Maybe um, there's a massive difference in them when they're around animals or when they're doing things with crystals, or for some kids it might be skateboarding
yeah.
or
Yeah.
computer programming, being careful with the EMF, but like don't put a limit on what their passions might be,
Yeah. Yeah.
so
We're
far
not,
as you're able to.
yeah.
Yeah.
My understanding of it from higher perspective, if these children have come to the planet, they have here to make a huge difference.
Mhm.
Our part is to support it in any way we can do that. And so,
Yeah.
I would be saying explore the options, find out what can work, what is
Yeah.
best. And we're learning more and more that, yeah, for example, mainstream medicine does have the answers, but we also need to think for ourselves. If we say we're individual, we say that we have a mind of our own, we choose for ourselves, then it's nice to have that information, but it's also nice to look at other things, because it's like anything. Like, I'll use myself here because I don't really want to get to talk about other people in this. um for example, I had to work out early in the process when I was diagnosed with rheumatoid about what I wanted to do. Like, did I want to have the medication, or did I want to, or what was the alternative to the medication? You know,
Mhm.
and I did a lot of research at the time, and I remember feeling rather depressed because I thought the diagnosis was so bad, and that it was so bad in the sense that it wasn't very positive. There was no
Mhm.
positives coming out of it. It was like, and I have a sister who's had it, and I've seen what it's done to her and what the medication had done to her. And I thought, I want to try and do this differently.
Mhm.
But I found that the journey of self-discovery was the more really helped me work out what I could, what I adjusted to, what felt right, what didn't. Because sometimes something might, it's really interesting, and I don't know if you experience this now in your world, but I might have a sensitivity to, I don't know, let's use an example. I might have a sensitivity to something today, and I have adverse reactions to it in terms of my joints. And then 6 months down the line, I might have that very same thing and nothing will happen.
Mhm. Yeah.
And you're like, okay, what happened here? How did that go from that to that? And so it's continuously learning. We
Mhm.
have to we have to take the way forward. We have to move forward in and show the way forward. And I believe this is important. The role that parents of children that are neurodivergent take is very, very important, because you guys are the pace setters for the future in so many ways. And
Mm.
you're going to show parents that are to come in the future how you stepped out, you had the courage to step out and to take the journey to self, because it's part of it is the journey to self, but also make sure that the children affected by it are getting what they need, and make it holistic. Your life's obviously perhaps a little bit more, dare I say it, more intense than most people, because you have different things happening. It's about sensitivity. It's about emotion. It's two children. It's not one. So it's very different, I'm sure.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. It's about empowering children to be the change makers that they're meant to be.
Mhm.
And and in the process, it's almost like you can't help but have your own spiritual awakening or evolution unfold, because
Yes.
it just kind of has to. And it's a beautiful thing to just get in tune with
Yeah.
your own intuitive response to what's going to work for them and what's going to work for you.
Yeah.
And sometimes part of that might be a bit of a like dark night of the soul experience where you're like,
Oh, yeah.
this is so hard.
Yeah.
Just just know that you'll come out the other side.
Yes. And we have so
Yeah.
much more help these days. It's being openly spoken of. So that's really good.
Mm.
I mean, it was never going to be easy, but the way shows are the parents and they can make a difference in this. And sometimes things feel challenging because we're ignorant of the true meaning of what that is. And so when we find out what is the true meaning of this, what has my child come to do here? What have I come to do here? Because you cannot want to know what your child has come to do here without trying to find out what you've come to do here. Because I think they go hand in hand, you know.
Mm.
So I think it's really good that people follow the bliss, follow the instinct, go within and figure out, okay, what do I do from here? I might have had this news. I'm preparing myself and I'm feeling like it's doom and gloom. How do I get out of that? Or you could have a different response. Say, oh, well, that's okay. We will deal with it. This is us. We're a family. That's what we're going to do.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Yeah.
anything else you want to tell me before we wrap up the interview
Mm.
or tell our audience?
Yeah, I won't waffle on too much, but yeah, it is, as you say, it's an ongoing process of evolution, sort of co-creating with your family,
Yeah.
and bringing to the light what needs to be brought to the light.
Yeah.
And it's it's fascinating. Sometimes it's challenging, um, and as you said, there's so many people you can reach out to for support now.
Yeah.
If you're interested
Yeah.
in holistic support for your children, there's a lot out there.
Mm.
So remember to ask for help. Sometimes it's
Yeah.
really frightening to ask for help.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know what I was going to say. I was going to say, I think that most people in situations like this are likely to turn to that mindfulness practice, the meditation, whether you become highly spiritual or not. But yeah, just for me, I see completely medicating without any of those other tools and techniques is not great.
Mm.
For
Yeah,
want
you
of,
need a
yeah, go
the
on.
more presence you can have, the better, obviously. But that just reminded me. I had a friend recently share um, a post on Facebook, and it was from a Christian perspective, but it's relevant to whatever
Yeah,
type of spirituality you hold. And it was talking about, notice how in the Bible, the prophets, they were always going up to a mountaintop to or something to have revelations and talk to God.
yes,
Um, and it's like, yeah, but what about the women?
yeah,
Um, and the crux of it was, you know what, women don't need to do that because God comes to you. And it gave some examples from the Bible, and I thought,
yes,
like that. There's a lot of wisdom in that, because sometimes you can feel like, oh, I just don't have time to be spiritual because I'm so busy with this
mm,
daily grind of cleaning and laundry and prepping meals and tending to these really physical needs. And it's really great if you can get a break and do
yeah,
things for
yeah,
yourself. And at the same time, remember that it's always there and it's always in you. And just
yeah,
bringing that depth and that spirituality to the seemingly mundane, because what's what's more beautiful than holding a baby in your arms, or you know,
Yes, yes. And I was gonna,
reading that bedtime
yeah,
story with love, and
yeah,
it's like, yeah,
yeah,
bring God to you, or whatever your version of God is, because
yeah.
yeah.
Wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. I was gonna say, I think to keep oneself sane, to keep oneself on track, I'll say oneself, yeah, because it's applicable to all of us.
Yeah.
It is important to adopt some mindfulness practice because this is how this is self-care and self-love. It's about looking after yourself first so that you can be selfless when you do stuff for others, right? Be selfish to be selfless.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
both. It's like doing things you need to do for yourself, and it's bringing mindfulness to the times where you're just in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We
You're
don't have
physically in it,
yeah,
but
yeah.
yeah, you can
Well, you
still.
can't stop and think, but you can function because you've got that extra burst of energy that keeps you going through that day.
Mm.
Yes.
Mm.
All right, Kirsty. Time for us to say goodbye to you. We will talk about whether you want to come back, off the recording, and if there was anything else to come back and talk about. But thank you so much for giving us your time for talking about this, because I think it's a sensitive topic and a lot of people don't want to talk about it, but at least you were kind enough to say yes when I suggested it. And also, I just thought that you're such a valuable wealth of information that we can share with many people. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. I've really enjoyed talking to you. It's been enjoyable. It's been somewhat therapeutic. Just
It's
talking.
good.
Yeah,
It's good. That's really good. Yeah, it's good to know
and we
that.
want to get these conversations out there. There's lots of us out there, and
Yeah,
share our wisdom. We'll all be the stronger for it. Yeah.
and I think a lot of this is the way of the future. I'm not saying all of it is, but I'm saying a lot of this is the way of the future. And the sooner we get on board with understanding this, it's also going to contribute to that transformational evolution process that the earth is going through. Because we're all suddenly awakening to things, right? And I was just saying this to somebody else as well, because in the last 2 weeks there's been a lot of awakening in my world to my Lemurian self. I knew I was in Lemuria, but I didn't know what about Lemuria, and I've lost my memories a lot because I've figured out in the last few days it's actually trauma that's caused me to forget. Like, I did not want to remember it.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of transformation happening, and this is it. We are all part of it. So there you go. It's part of my transformation, and the light that is coming down at the moment is actually propelling us to remember, propelling us to deal with things that we haven't dealt with before. Okay. Thank you again, Kirsty. Thank you so much for your time. So much love and, good vibes and high vibration to you and to your family, because what a good thing that you've done today to be talking about this. And I sensed from the first part of the second interview that the one that we're about to publish, that there was some times when it did sound therapeutic. It was very sad, some parts of it, and I thought, oh, it's quite an experience, isn't it? And so, yeah, thank you for that. Thank you for being bold to talk about it.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing when we can be vulnerable with each other.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Great. All right, I'll catch you next time. Thank you, everyone, for joining us here on the Great Awakening Generator. Kirsty Marie and I are saying goodbye, and you never know, we might be back together again. Take care. Bye.